Wave is new to me since learning about you. Can
Yeah.
you maybe explain to those who also don't know what wave is in a sort of concise way? What is wave?
Great question. So, in my personal opinion, wave is an umbrella term used to describe a very specific, very niche style of like sort of SoundCloud music that's sort of come around slightly earlier in 2015, 2013, 2014. It's basically just like really emotional, quite dark, fairly like atmospheric sort of like bass music, essentially, which borrows elements from sort of like trance, trap, pretty much everything. It's just a real amalgamation of a lot of styles. It was around 2015, I think it got labeled when one of the pioneers from like dubstep and grime, a producer and DJ called Plastician, found it and started basically exclusively playing his music on his Rinse FM show back in 2015. And he pretty much named it Wave. The reason he named it Wave is because around that time there was a lot of like everything on SoundCloud was something wave. So chill wave, vapor wave, trill wave. There's all these weird like subgenres of this like certain like styles of trap beats essentially. So I guess he just sort of took that part and just named it Wave, and I thought it was a pretty appropriate term.
So interesting, because I think those all worlds. That's what I thought. Like, what is really popular now? Those like, who's the guy? Lil Peep. Like those.
Yeah.
Super really popular in the mainstream.
Yeah. Yeah. So Lil Peep actually performed at our label's like launch party.
Wow.
Like an idea of like how related these sort of like sounds are. So yeah, and a lot of those producers that have produced for Lil Peep have been on my label or been in my collectives and stuff. So yeah, there is like a serious link. And I also produced for Bexy, which was the artist that was best friends with Peep and on tour with Peep at the time that he passed. So it's all very related.
So Jude, you started making music at 17, I understand. What was the sort of what inspired you? Because for some people that might be kind of late. I know you're still a young man at 17, but
that's when I started producing. That's when I started producing. I sort of started learning like guitar and other sort of instruments and bits of piano pretty much my whole life.
Okay.
But mostly in my teens. I played in like a few metal bands and rock bands and stuff, but nothing really notable.
What made you change from being a sort of musician to becoming a producer?
Yeah, well, you know, it is when you first started getting into bands at like an early age, the hardest part, at least I found, was just getting all the kids together in one room, you know, like by the time we actually set our instruments up and plan a date and we all like stop being distracted and stop talking about whatever we saw on TV or whoever's kissing who. Yeah, like there wasn't really a lot of time to really start getting music together. And from an early age, I always used to watch my uncle like make a bit of music on his computer for like sort of music he'd write for like plays and stuff. And I just was always so fascinated by it because it kind of just reminded me of like a video game, which I was always like really into when I was younger. So years later, when I was at college, I basically just saw some of my other friends who were in the music class start making some electronic music. And obviously, once you join college, was my introduction into like electronic music and stuff, and like going to like raves and stuff.
I think that seems to be the trend for people, is that you meet new people, you hear something new, and think, oh, I like a bit of that, I want to try it. What was so from what you're making now compared to when you were 17, how's your sound developed? What was it like at 17? Do you listen back to any of those like demos and think,
oh yeah. Well, the interesting thing is I always think, and it's weird because I'm a very self-critical person, but I actually think some of my early music had a bit of innocent magic about it. Yeah. You know, like I went into things with such an open mind, with such little knowledge of using the software. You use these like little bits of creativity to get past certain like problems. You know, it's like producing and mixing or anything is essentially problem solving. So going back and listening to all my old tracks is actually quite refreshing in a way. It's changed a lot. Back then I was just very influenced by the sounds that I was hearing at the time. I was really into like the sort of quite original UK dubstep sound. With my limited like producing knowledge, was playing around with the more like slightly easier styles of music to make, more like trap and stuff like that. So I had this weird sort of always, even from the beginning, had this weird blend between the two styles, which eventually turned into like wave, which is the music I'm like popular for now.
Absolutely. I think maybe does your background in like metal and like what would maybe emo-esque music, I feel that fits in so well as well.
Oh yeah, 100%.
What's a mistake that all up and coming musicians make?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think what I was going to say was I think a lot of producers try to sound like, or artists, musicians try to sound like someone else. And I think it's always best to sound unique because then you stand out. But at the same time, it depends what you're doing this for. Because if you're making music just for fun and you just want to try to make music like your favorite artist, who am I to tell you that you shouldn't do that either? And I definitely did that, and I'm sure you've done that. And every artist at some point is like, oh, I want to make a track like this, or I want to make a track like that. But I think like once you get to the point where you actually want to, it stops being a hobby, and you actually think, I actually want to do this. You need your own sound, and I think the easiest way to do that is to take influence from other sorts of music that are a bit more obscure. Another thing I'd say is like, people make this music, they get it out there, they put it out there, but they might have like a huge plan on maybe how they get their artwork together and how they want the track to sound and all that stuff, but they haven't really got much of a marketing plan. I've always been quite a bit of a marketing guy. Every real life job I've ever had was sales and stuff like that, so I've always been thinking about how to try to sell my music as well.
Let's talk about gear a little bit. Are you totally digital? Are you like analog? You got some outboard stuff? How does it work?
Me, like many artists in our scene, is 100% digital. In fact, it's like one of the interesting things about this music and trap and sort of all this sort of SoundCloud music is it's mostly just kids on laptops with like pirated software. I think that is still somewhat true to this day. You know, I don't really know of many artists in the scene that are using like big hardware rigs. It might be something that's happening soon.
If you could, would you be using outboard analog stuff?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't personally think. Maybe. I'm just such a lazy person. I think that, and I'm so comfortable in my simplicity. Like I've always like my setup is basically just like PC, MIDI keyboard, speakers. That's it. And like even though I have a MIDI keyboard, even though I play piano, I love being able to just click in melodies and stuff. Like sometimes with my brain, anyway, that just seems to just work very nicely for me. Although I have been using a lot of like digital instruments and stuff. Like some of the plugins you can get now, like free ones, are so crazy.
Very interesting. What are like your like? All right, I'm making a track. What do I need? What are your go-to synth sounds or plugins?
Yeah, so Serum is my big one. My main part of my income is basically selling like Serum packs. That's especially during COVID when I lost all my gigs and all my tours. I just put like a lot of energy into doing that, and it's going really well. So Serum is number one. I use FL Studio, and there's like this one plugin called Gross Beat. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's essentially like it's kind of like a glitch plugin. Like it can do all sorts of. It's really hard to explain what it exactly does, and you can like set it to do certain things where it will like whatever's running through it. Say it's like a guitar, right? It'll play at like half-time speed, so you can create these like absolutely nuts sort of like layer melodies that come out of absolutely nowhere just by clicking a few random places on like a grid. But like, so I create a melody, I run it through this thing 4 or 5 times, have all these different variations, and then I bounce them out and then glitch them out even more. But sometimes I'm not always going in like, okay, I know exactly what I'm doing. A lot of it is just experimenting. So some days my beats will suck, and other days they'll sound nuts.
Fantastic. What is next for Kareful?
Oh, loads of stuff. Well, my record label's doing pretty well. I think this is like our best year so far. And I'm putting a lot of time in these like preset packs. I've been doing that. It's basically replaced like all my tour income. And what I'm doing at the moment is just working with a lot of local artists, put out a lot of interesting music, all sorts of styles of music. I'm going to be working a lot with this one rapper called Spose, which is, in my opinion, one of the best artists in the UK at the moment. Super underground artist, but he's got something real special. Other than that, yeah, just have fun is the main thing as well. I think one thing that, well, it was actually more to the end of last year, but one thing I've changed is my whole mentality towards music and what I want out of it myself personally. For a long time, I always wanted to be like rich and famous and successful and touring around and doing this and doing that. And my goals were so big that when things started happening, like good opportunities started happening, like I started playing this festival, I played Fabric or this club, or all these dreams that I had, I just for some reason didn't appreciate it enough at the time. Not because I was arrogant, but it was more like, yeah, this is just what has to happen. So now I've decided to like just basically just have fun and never do stuff if I'm not going to enjoy it, you know?
Sounds like an exciting year ahead for you. I'm looking forward to listening to it. Jude, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today. See you next time.
Yeah.